Welcome, everyone, to the Within the Cauldron podcast. So, first, I'm just going to give you a brief intro for anybody who does not know. Our host for this evening will be Chrissy, Amy, Nico, me, Amber, and our special co host for the evening is Colleen, and she will be introducing our guest for the evening.
Thank you, Amber. Appreciate that. Hi, everyone. I just want to introduce a wonderful person here, Chris McKinnell. He is the grandson of legendary paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. I'm sure you all have heard of them. And he spent over 40 years investigating the world's most notorious supernatural phenomena, from hauntings to demonic possessions and so much more. So welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us this evening to discuss your wonderful paranormal investigations and your life.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be back.
Thank you. Let's hope we do everything right this time. But thank you so much for coming back a second time. We all appreciate that very much.
Not a problem.
We all love our paranormal side of us. So the first question I have for you will be, there were so many cases of your grandparents. Which one was your favorite that you have heard about?
Wow, my favorite. This is gonna be one that people don't think about as much. The Lindley Street case from Bridgeport, Connecticut. I can't say I even know as much about it as probably a lot of people do, but that's because I was 7 or 8 years old when that case broke. Wow. And I grew up in Bridgeport. That's where I was born. And it was a circus. It was amazing. And then to have my grandparents telling me how a black cat walked up the stairs from the basement and looked at a priest and a police officer and said, "Go to hell." I mean, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world.
Wow.
Oh,
So
wow.
that one, I think, but actually my favorite, now that I think about it, is a case very few people know about. My grandparents were called into West Point by the camp commandant, the school commandant. Mm-hmm. There was a haunting going on. They were worried because it was going on in the commandant's household. And my grandmother was able to connect with a soldier who was a black man from around 1800. And they said, no, that's not true. There were no black soldiers in 1800 at West Point. This man had come through and he had said he had been accused of something he hadn't done, etc. It turns out, yes, he really was there. They looked up the historical records and they were able to exonerate him and help him to find his rest. It was actually a very special story. That's actually in their very first book, which very few people know about, called Deliver Us from Evil. It used to be available on Amazon. Some woman was selling it online. I don't know how she got the rights to it, but it may still be available to you if you want to check it out.
Definitely.
That's pretty validating to get that information, historically. I mean, as a medium, I always love to have, I kind of classify myself as more of an evidential medium. So to have that information presented to your grandmother as proof that what she was getting, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I mean, I don't like labels, but I have those abilities. Mm-hmm. And I don't trust myself or anybody without evidence. I don't want to lead anybody down the wrong path. And I know that if somebody believes in us, we have such a responsibility. That's and true. I never want to lead them down the wrong path. You definitely go with that man. That man's safe for you. And then he turns out to be a serial killer. I don't want to be that guy.
Right.
I agree. I have abilities too, but I don't like to put a label on them for the same reason. I'm scared that I will lead someone into the hands of the wrong person.
Well, and labels are self-limiting. Oh, I'm this. That means I'm not that. I don't want to limit myself. I'm willing to try just about anything. There are a couple of things I feel I'm not good at. Remote viewing is one. Another one I don't like doing is looking at photos through electronic medium. You give me an actual photo, no problem. But electronics mess with my own sensitivity to energy, and I don't know what I'm picking up on.
Especially with AI right now, it's kind of like it's really hard to believe anything.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother thing completely.
I was just going to say that, Amy. That's perfect. I was just going to say the same thing because I'm the same way. I'm more tactile. I want to actually physically, if I'm going to do psychometry, I want to be able to actually physically touch the item, not actually look at it on a screen. So that makes complete sense.
I use my hands like that all the time. I'm constantly putting my hands around objects to try to pick up on what I'm feeling. I had a wonderful experience in Mexico. We had been invited into a private museum. And in the first floor, the first thing, of course, we asked permission from the spirit to be allowed to come into the home. If they're not going to let us in, we are not going to go in there. And as I'm walking around that first room after getting permission, I'm feeling something on this wall, and I can't figure out why. And there's nothing in particular there. But then I found out that as they were talking about the history of this house and how the woman had murdered a child and then taken her own life, the wallpaper on the wall that I'd been feeling all this energy from had been ripped right off at that moment. As I sat on the woman's bed in the next room, I found that, yes, she blamed herself for the death of this child, but she didn't actually kill the child. But she did take her own life. And a weird thing in Mexico, they will punish the dead body. They walled her up in the house. Sometimes they used to hang them too. But in this case, they walled her up in the house.
I had no idea they did that. That's really intriguing.
That is. Another question I want just to get this out there and get it over with, okay? Because I know everybody's asking about Annabelle. I want your truth on Annabelle so we can just get that question out of there, okay?
Are you asking me what is Annabelle?
Just your thoughts on Annabelle, everything. I want the truth, like we talked before, how you feel about the whole thing.
Okay. Well, I don't think Annabelle's a demon at all. I've been around too much to believe in, how do I put this? I believe in the phenomena. I've experienced it. I know it exists. But I also have seen that it manifests differently all over the world based on our own perceptions, our own beliefs, and the energy we're putting into it. So I don't believe in demons per se. At least I don't believe what the word means to most people. Annabelle is, in my opinion, something called a tulpa, a thought form created by one or two women that sort of took on a life of its own. And when they were given a story by a medium that this was a child who had died, it was inhabiting the doll, it was looking for someone to love them, that made them love it more, gave it more energy, gave it a backstory. In other words, they labeled it and turned it into a child, basically. And it began to act like a child. It played games. It hid from them in the house. It would move from place to place. It would leave notes saying things like, want to play, miss me. And then as they started to get creeped out, feeling as though something is watching them all the time, their energy changed. And they were feeding it more fear than love.
Yeah.
That's when the notes started to get creepier, saying things like, help me. Which, if you think about it, if you're a little girl, supposedly little girl spirit, and you're now being feared, maybe that is what you would ask for instead of, play with me. Yeah. But one afternoon, one of Debbie's boyfriend was sleeping on the couch. He woke up and he said that Annabelle in his dream had crawled up him and was trying to choke him to death. He got up, he walked across the room to where Annabelle was sitting in a chair, picked it up, threw it across the room, and said, "Yeah, you're just a stupid doll. You couldn't hurt anyone." As soon as he said that, something clawed him across the chest. The whole room was rocking with banging noises. The chair the doll had been sitting in shot across the room, and they really got frightened. And they called Father Trable, who was a Lutheran priest in Hartford. And luckily, the priest knew my grandparents, because this was before my grandparents were famous. And my grandparents immediately went in. My grandfather had already prejudged the fact that this could not be a child because his Catholic beliefs would not allow him to believe that. My grandmother, being again Catholic, feels this negative energy, and her interpretation was, this is a demon. Now, that's the way she told me, and that's the way I interpreted it for a long time. But now I understand that we have more power than we give ourselves credit for. We can manifest spirits with our own energy. That's what a poltergeist can be. Not all, but it can be. In this case, it was something that took on a life of its own from our energy. I think today it's more of an egregore, which is an entity created through a collective energy. And the fact that all of the movies and the attention, especially with what's going on now, they're just feeding so much into this thing. And as I've warned people for ages, it can be very dangerous. Yeah, I'm not going to speak about specifics, but when you're dealing with something like that, I don't believe that it causes fires at plantations or helps prisoners escape. But if your energy mingles with its energy, then it can attach to you. It can harm you. It's like getting too close to a venomous cobra.
That's a good analogy.
So yes, it can do harm. And I urge people not to visit it, please.
Chrissy, if you don't mind, I wanted to say something in lieu of that. Chris, that's interesting you said that, because one of the cases that I like to follow is, and I believe it's the Myrtle Plantation is it in Louisiana, or I'm not sure exactly where it's at, but the whole premise of Chloe, the slave who murdered apparently the children of the plantation owner, they have no record of her whatsoever being a slave and falling in love with the plantation owner, and that the deaths of the wife and the children were caused by her. They have kind of proven that that's a manifestation of people that have been going to Myrtle Plantation and creating that energy and talking about it and manifesting it. And therefore it's created its own, in a sense, monster, so to speak. Yeah. So you get that now where people take pictures and they go, that's Chloe. Chloe is in the plantation. She's in the window. So it's exactly, to back up what you're saying, is our energy level is we have way more energy than we give ourselves credit for.
Absolutely. And everything is energy. Everything in the universe is just energy at one vibration or another. And if you're vibrating at a lower level, that's what you're going to manifest.
Correct.
They did the experiment in, I think it was around 1970. It's called the Philip experiment in Canada, where they made up this backstory about this aristocrat from the 1700s named Philip. And they would talk about him. They would meet once a week, talk about him, and act like he was a real person when they knew full well he wasn't. And then they would try to do table readings with him, and he would thump the table for answers and things like that. After about a year of concerted effort, they created this egregore.
Yeah, it's precisely.
It kind of makes me think of almost that creation of like those dip candles where you dip it in wax and that's like one person placing their energy on it, and then you dip it again and then another person placed another layer, and eventually that's going to be a full-blown candle ready to be sparked. And it's kind of like it's just waiting, and everybody keeps placing that energy and thoughts for it, and eventually it really truly becomes something.
That's a neat analogy. I like that.
Yeah. Interesting.
And Colleen, I think you have some questions you want to ask.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So, considering in lieu of what we were talking about, and doing investigations and encountering the things that you've encountered, and I obviously being a medium as well and having a gift, I have experienced things through my investigations, and I always like to say I'm learning every day as I go through, and need more protection and feel like I need to manifest more energy for myself to protect myself. You probably have done the same thing with your gifts. You have, quite a history of things that have occurred to you. Could you share some of the things that have occurred to you through the years?
Oh, absolutely. Myself, my grandparents, many other researchers I'm aware of. It doesn't matter how much you protect yourself sometimes.
Exactly.
If they want to try to intimidate you, they're going to try. But to me, that it was always proof that they were not fallen angels with the wisdom of the ages, because they often try exactly the same tactics they've tried 100 times over, and they just don't work. But some of the things we've experienced during the exorcism of Maurice Theriault, I was protecting the bishop while he was doing the exorcism. My grandfather and grandmother were off to the side, and my grandfather was having a heart attack during the exorcism. Another time I had to go to Philadelphia to work on a case, and 3 nights in a row, the 3 nights before I went, the gas on my gas stove turned on without the flame and filled up the whole house with gas. I woke up to it each morning. Another time I was in Philadelphia again, and I had just broken a generational curse on a family. And as we were getting on the highway, the brakes went out in the car and we slammed right into another vehicle. Let's see, what else? Oh, in the Smurl House, which is the next Conjuring film. When my grandfather sent me into that house, I was levitated over the stairs.
Oh my gosh.
And another home in Tewksbury, Massachusetts. It was a poltergeist case that had been solved for 2 years and no problems. And I spent the night there. I'd been working with the family. My cousin was with me. He didn't believe that anything had ever taken place in this house. And the 10-year-old gave up his bed to us reluctantly. And all of a sudden, the bed picked up and flew across the room, smashed down, and broke into pieces.
Oh my
Now,
God.
nothing else ever happened again after that incident. It was just a one-time in 2 years incident. And I'm convinced it was the 10-year-old tapping into the energy that was still in that household.
I was just going to ask you if that's what you thought it was, because
Yeah.
like you said, if it had been closed, the case closed, and there was no more evidence or any activity happening. But yet again, that going back to that manifestation aspect, 10-year-old tapping into the energy, I could totally see that happening. That's wild.
Also, around that time too, like I'm sure you guys all know, they're going through a lot of changes at that age too. Like
Right.
I know when I was around that age, I had things happen around the house that we couldn't explain. So.
This is a reality. I mean, I have worked on so many poltergeist cases that turned out just to be a family in turmoil, and the kids were manifesting. One or more kids was manifesting something around them. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be a child. It can be a person who is very psychic but doesn't really understand what that means. And they think they're haunted, and they move from house to house to house, and they're constantly having this spirit follow them. No, they're just a bright light in the darkness, and they're constantly attracting new spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And once we teach them that, all of a sudden their demons turn out to just be visiting spirits that they're able to help send on their way. it becomes a much more beautiful experience.
As opposed to being called demonic, you know.
Again, labels. You
I
know,
hate
you
We
just
had
take that good experience and you turn it into something horrifying for yourself.
Exactly.
I denied my abilities to my mother a few times when I was younger, and weird stuff was happening. And my mom's like, you just need to embrace who you are. You don't need to fear who you are.
You were so lucky to have your mom. I got to tell you. So
Yes,
kids
I
don't have-
agree.
I was very blessed. I was really blessed because I had a lot of shadow people around that age, and it really freaked me out, and she talked to me through it. So, because I remember she was even scared to go past my bedroom because she would see like a shadow person spooning me. Very terrifying. But yeah.
See, I don't get that, honestly, and please forgive me. But
You're fine.
I don't believe in shadow people as something different than a physical manifestation of a ghost that's incomplete.
For me, they just only call, like, my mom only called a shadow person because that's what it appeared to be. I don't know for certain if that was what it was, but that's just what we called it because that's what it looked like. It could have been something completely else. I don't know.
I'm worried about how people now, especially now, they've got the Hat Man, the Slender Man, all of these different labels that we again are throwing on things, and then we turn it into something it may not actually be. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe that the Hat Man may actually manifest now. The Slender Man has. And the Slender Man was created online for creepypasta. I mean, we know that's fake.
Right.
You know?
For me, I believe that a lot of people believe in it. It's just like a thought form. That's my thought on that.
Exactly. But that's the problem with labels. If we educate people, then they start to understand that, wait a minute, yes, I saw a shadow person, but a shadow person means a physical manifestation of a ghost, nothing else. It's hard to physically manifest. A psychic manifestation is so much easier. They just project how they looked in life. My grandmother, when she comes back to me, she's my age.
No.
She's 60. She's not 92.
Well, and I think also with like the idea of like shadow people and thought forms, that so often when we have an experience and we want to label something we don't know, we fear the unknown in certain ways. You send out that fear, and then immediately, it becomes kind of, a shadow. It becomes darker, it becomes more intense, and you try to avoid it. While I feel like if people almost had a more lighthearted approach to it, like, oh, hey, or even, I mean, if they acknowledge it, just a lighter reaction to it, a more friendly reaction in a way, that maybe the results would be different and it wouldn't, get as intense in a certain way.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right.
Agree. Either don't acknowledge it at all, or if you do, my son used to be afraid of the dark. And there was actually a spirit that came to me and my grandparents. His name was Harry Price. And he was a famous ghost hunter in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And my grandparents actually looked up to him. And he appeared to us in Halifax, Nova Scotia. It must have been 1987 or so. And he said he'd be watching over me for the rest of my life because I was going to be important in this field. So and I didn't believe him at the time, but when my son was afraid, I said, don't worry, we have our own ghost who protects us. His name's Harry. Anytime we have a problem, we just say, Harry, go ahead and kick his butt.
Love it.
And that made it so much nicer. All of a sudden, my son's able to start talking to ghosts and feeling good about it.
I love that. I tell my one of my children who has abilities the same. We have our protectors, and you have because I was really close to my grandfather. I'm like, you have your grandfather watching out for you. You have your grandmother. I'm like, you have generations looking out for you. You just need to call upon them for protection, and they're there too.
Exactly. And that's all it takes is that recognition, that law of attraction.
Yeah.
I had a case where, interestingly enough, that exactly as to what you're saying is a case where I had a friend of mine was texting me, and she was in Tucson, Arizona, and she said she was going to be going to a house where another medium had said, well, let me back up. The woman was an elderly woman who was hearing growling. And so automatically, again, they're thinking it's demonic. And I tapped in instantly and said, it's not demonic. It's the husband who has passed. And I said, he has a message. And she's like, well, I'll let you know if we need you. We're going to go down and investigate. She said another medium had said that, oh, there's a brown stain under the floor or under the bed, and there's a portal to hell. And I said, no, please don't do that. Please don't even encourage that thought process, because that is definitely not what's happening. He's trying to get your attention. And the only way he can do it is by growling, because now your senses are alive and alert to what's going on. And it turns out she contacted me, and I talked to her by text message, and I was telling her, I said, the gentleman, he died at 80. He was Lutheran Protestant. I said he was cremated. I said, oh, what is important about, this particular place in Tucson and Arches Pass or something like that? And I said, what's in Cleveland? Where I said, wait a minute, where are his ashes? And then I said, did the ashes get to the places that they were supposed to go? I said, he wanted them spread in 2 different locations. And I said, one in Tucson, and I said something about Cleveland. And they came back and they said, well, we were scared to send the ashes to Cleveland. We weren't sure, how to do that, how to go about doing that. We were afraid that they were going to get lost. So we didn't do it. And I said, well, he wanted them to go with a sister at a playground or something that was in an important place of value to him and his sister. And I said, where did you send those ashes? Where did they go? In the vegetable garden, in the backyard. And I said, well, there you go. That's why you've got your growling. And I said, and to paraphrase what he said, which I will not say on the podcast, I gave you one thing to do and you it up. And so, they were going down there thinking that this was going to be a demonic case. Yeah. And I told them, I said, 99.999% of the time, it's not demonic. But because we rationalize as humans, it's really easy to think to ourselves, just like Amber said, well, it's dark. And if we look at it, we're going to think demonic instead of actually just talking to it to find out that it's just an entity that has a message. Or maybe they want to say, hey, why can't you take some of the dirt from the vegetable garden and send it to my sister now so that I can rest in peace, Yeah. But that was the craziest thing. No, there was a dark. I said, lift up the bed and look. Prove me wrong. I said, I love to be proved wrong. Lift the bed up and look underneath the bed and let me know that there's a portal of hell under that bed.
Yeah. Going back to what Amber said actually about this as well, about the unknown being terrifying. People better be comfortable with the unknown in the paranormal world.
Correct.
Actually, we should be comfortable with the unknown, period. The universe is huge. We've barely scratched the surface of our understanding. We don't even understand what's in the ocean as well as we do what's on the moon. And we're still learning about the moon. Right. If you go into it prejudging what's in a home, you are doing the family you're there to help a disservice, and you may be causing them immense harm. Right. I don't allow anyone in the Warren Legacy Foundation to use the word demon. I don't care if people are spitting up green pea soup and walking on the ceiling. It's a culturally loaded term that's only going to terrify, and it's not going to help anyone.
Right.
Deal with the problem. But first, take the time to learn what the problem really is.
Exactly. Very succinctly said.
Yes.
I do have a question. So you've mentioned towards the beginning of the podcast that you had kind of a different definition of demon. Can you kind of just explain your thoughts on demons or demon as a term? So thought form. Okay.
Yeah. You will never see Christian style demon in a Hindu household. It just doesn't occur. The only time you're going to get a jinn in the United States is if you've dealt with somebody who served in Iraq or something like that, somewhere like Afghanistan, because then there's a possibility of an attachment. But it's not because they are some kind of separate kind of entity. They're energy given form through our intention or fears. You can be cursed. I mean, come on, you all know that. People can be cursed. But I'm a guy who's very rational, very more into quantum physics than I am into witchcraft. And for me, I have to think of it as directed energy. I've been cursed. I've upset certain magic users with my work, and I've been cursed. And my grandmother came to four psychics on the same night, on a Wednesday night, and told each of these women who didn't know each other, Christopher's under attack. He needs to take care of it. I was trying to rationalize all these things happening to me. And the next morning, I get 4 messages from women. I'm like, okay, I'm taking it seriously. And I did a couple of cleansing rituals, and immediately everything was fine. So yeah, I know it exists. Prayer is the same thing. We have prayer studies on AIDS patients, on heart patients, etc. We know that even in a double-blind experiment where the doctors and the patients have no idea that some of these patients are on prayer lists, the ones on prayer lists are going to improve. That's the power that we have. I think of the paranormal as something that shows us what is possible when we let go of fear. And that's what we're embracing. Stop with the drama and the hysteria and peddling fear for dollars. Let's talk about what's really behind all of this when we let go of it. I tell people I put it this way. Yes, electricity can kill you, but it can also light up the world.
Very well said. Very well said.
So in the comments, I'll put in the links in once again about everything that you do here. So did you want to talk a little bit more? Because I know you have a upcoming presentation in August, and that I know I'm interested in. So what about you? What is your new projects?
Well, let's see. I'm working on a book, which is a deep dive. I use the paranormal and different cases that myself and my grandparents have worked on as a way of opening the door to larger questions, like the nature of reality and what happens after death and why are we here. And it uses both psychology, cultural anthropology, quantum physics, comparative theology, spiritualism, all in a cohesive fashion to try to, if not explain everything, certainly ask better questions. And the problem is that I come up with new research studies constantly. So I have to keep revising what I'm writing. It's terrible because we are learning so much. And I'm so excited about where we are today. I never thought we would have these answers in my lifetime, but I'm beginning to think we might. Other than that, I'm working on a documentary, The Warren Legacy, which shows, now I've lived in over 100 places around the world. My work has taken me from the jungles of Colombia and the Kogi people to the Dalai Lama and hiking the Himalayas, etc. I'm studying animism in West Africa. I've been blessed to be able to learn from amazing people, and I want to share that knowledge. I don't understand why anyone hoards that kind of experience. You can't contribute to the world, and you can't help people to grow if you're not sharing. So I'm working on that as well. And as you mentioned, I'm going to be giving another presentation this August on Zoom. I did one this month, and it was actually phenomenally successful. We had a great bunch of people there. It's a intense introduction to the paranormal. It's the actual program's about an hour and a half long, and then we have well, all right, it's a little longer than that. And then we have a question and answer period, which can last up to an hour. That's my favorite part. And I can see this branching off into another presentation that's only stories, another one that's a deep dive into the mechanics behind the paranormal. We can do so much with it, but I want to keep this basic, Psych 101 style introductory course, because I think it's a good one for people to get started with. And there's so much that I want to share. So if anybody's interested, just reach out to me. We have a link. You may have it here somewhere.
Yeah, it's in the comments. Yeah, it's in the comments
great.
that you gave me. So, and I definitely would probably join. I couldn't join last time because we was out of town, which I should have took the
weekend.
the extra access that you have, because you have where you can watch it
For
during
up
the
to a weekend.
Right. Yeah. I should have took that instead, but I figured, well, I was going to be gone. So, but definitely,
It's going to be in August.
yeah, I definitely will go to the one in August. So I will fill this.
Yeah, I'm interested as well. Absolutely.
I would love to see you all there. We had a great time. I was very pleased with the way it went.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been doing presentations for decades all over the world, but this was different, and it was a new way for me to do it, and I had a lot of fun with it.
I love that you're doing that, because
Yes.
anyone who has abilities or have had any experience, the more information you can get and guidance is a blessing.
Speaking of people with abilities, my grandmother used to help psych one-on-one back in the day when it was easier because, she wasn't as well known. Mm-hmm. That's not as feasible anymore. So when people started coming to me overwhelmed by their abilities and having anxiety attacks, panic attacks, I put together a support group because I used to be a therapist. I guess I still am sometimes. But we have an online support group. We've got about over 900 people in the group right now, all around the world. It's just for people with gifts. It's not just for people with panic attacks and things of that nature. It's expanded tremendously. It's a place where you can learn to protect yourself, ground yourself, or hone your gifts, share what's going on in your own life. It's a very supportive community. It's not something, where you're going to get free readings or anything like that. We don't do readings or advertising of any sort. And it is free and confidential. It's only for people who are gifted and want to be understood. So if anybody is interested, reach out to me on Facebook. I'll get you the link, and just
definitely I would be interested.
I'm very interested as well.
Oh yeah.
Well,
it would just be nice.
Welcome, both of you.
To people who can relate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just make sure you answer our membership questions, please.
Okay, I will. I promise. I pinky swear.
Hey, cousin Nico, what do you have? You've been kind of quiet and kind of taking everything in.
Things in. Yeah.
Yeah, you do that. That's how you gain your knowledge, is just being quiet.
The wise man is silent and listens.
Yeah, but he's the information that's in his head. We always say that his hair is full of magical secrets because he just whip out these answers. I'm like, how do you know that?
Yeah. If he takes off his headset and shake his head, you see all kind of sparkling things coming out. Amber, my dear, do you have any questions, hon?
Let's see. I mean, there's a lot. Okay, let me try to organize my thoughts on that. So, okay, well, because you kind of go with the hesitation approach in a way, let's weed out when you approach a more paranormal investigation, it seems like. What are some of the initial thoughts that run through your head? Which direction, how do you weave it to begin with, I guess?
Keep an open mind. Don't prejudge. Even and make it clear to people. The first thing you should do when you go into a home is minimize the fear. Very first contact you make with someone, minimize their fear. Give them some tools to protect themselves, to understand what they may or may not be going through, so that maybe it's not as overwhelming. For instance, today, a woman got a hold of me, and she felt like she's been haunted her whole life. Even before she was born, her family was haunted. And now she's dealing with shadow people, and she's dealing with turmoil in the family with the housemates that they don't get along with, and all sorts of things happening. Well, it turns out she may be psychic. She seems to think she's psychic. So psychics, their aura burns more brightly than ordinary persons. They're more attractive to souls. I used to call them ghost magnets. Now I call them lighthouses in the darkness for lost souls. I think ghost magnets is a much quicker thing to say. But the point being, she's not necessarily being haunted. And so we immediately gave her those tools and talked to her about that, and about cleaning her home, getting rid of all the clutter in the house, making sure that the energy is flowing freely and cleanly, maybe watching comedies that make you laugh out loud, and listen to music that makes you want to sing and dance and be happy. Leave the arguments outside. Don't bring those into the house. Don't bring that negativity in. That will solve 50% of any problem in any house, paranormal or not. So that's a good start. And again, like I said, don't prejudge. Even though it may be that she's psychic, I don't know that yet. So Monday or Tuesday, we're going to have a meeting with her and find out what's actually going on. We have everybody fill out a form, so we get a lot of information ahead of time. And then we ask a few more questions and get started. And then after we've had an actual sit down with them, then we come up with a service plan and a plan of action, basically. And you can tell I was a social worker. And then after we've done that, we implement it. There are things that they have to do. There are things we've got to do. But I always emphasize, this is your journey. We're only here to walk by your side. We're not doing this for you. We can't. There are no magic wands to wave for this kind of thing. And there's always going to be an underlying issue when we're dealing with a negative manifestation. So don't be embarrassed to talk to us about your drug abuse or your domestic violence. That doesn't rule out the paranormal. That just makes it more likely.
Right.
But if you don't deal with that, if we're not dealing with the whole problem, then we can close that door, but it's just going to reopen because all the problems that make it open are still there.
Or
answer your question?
Any type of trauma too, from like the past that she's not dealing with.
Absolutely.
Maybe she needs to start journaling about it and letting it release. That would probably help her out a lot. I don't know that person, but that helped me. So
absolutely. And here's another thing, speaking of journals, and this is something I got from a dear friend of mine, a colleague of mine, Kathy Rogers up in Canada. Because people, when they believe that they're in a haunting, all of a sudden everything seems to be part of a haunting. Oh, there was some tic-tac noises outside. Must be part of the haunting. No, it was probably a bird. So what we say is, and she was brilliant to come up with this, get a notebook. When you feel that something is really paranormal, write down the time, the date, all of the atmospheric information, and then everything in detail. Where were you? Who was with you? What exactly happened? How did you feel before and after? And then take your notebook and put it in the car, put it in the garage, put it up in the attic, put it far away from you. And only get that out again when you're sure you're dealing with something paranormal. That way they stop putting so much energy into these manifestations. They're like, that was just normal. I'm not going to bother with that. And very quickly things die down.
It's releasing it, especially when you're going through like paranormal trauma. Like any way you can release it and let it go.
Yeah.
Helps so much.
And I love the idea that you help so many, because I know when we talked the first time, you helped those that was affected by some cases, paranormal cases and everything. I love that you are there, that everybody can trust and confine in. That's great. I think your grandparents be very proud of you for that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is something you got from your grandmother, is to
Yeah.
help others.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that's,
yeah.
that's really great.
Especially with the paranormal. Like,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
Well, wait a minute. I don't want to take away from my grandfather on this one either. I mean, it's important that I point out both of them would drop anything to help someone in trouble.
True.
They were both amazing in that way.
That's amazing.
I grew up with that example, so it was pretty ingrained in me. You're right. I did get that from them.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And I know they're both looking down and say, yep, there's a boy.
Because that's why we created
Absolutely.
the group.
I'm not sure my grandmother is looking down. She's here an awful lot.
She just doesn't want to leave you.
She's
She
just,
loves you.
give you, helping you, guide you through it.
She's with me a lot, but she also comes to a lot of other people. She just was with Chip Coffey, as a matter of fact.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they were very close. I know that. So he said that she's been coming quite frequently in his dreams. So he was.
He told me only once, actually.
He had posted a couple times that she'd come through in his dreams, and that he was very excited for that. So
I can't share all of it. Obviously, it was personal,
right.
but it was good. Not all good. There were other problems that were the more personal parts, and I'm working to help fix those situations.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
I'm glad
really
he
good.
can come to you and talk to you about that.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a good segue for you to take a moment. Can you explain to us a little bit more about the Warren Legacy Foundation and how we can help support your work?
Sure. We're a group of volunteers. We offer free and confidential help to anybody around the world who is suffering from either the paranormal or just something they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And we're here to help guide them or help them maybe do a house cleansing, or sometimes in very, very severe cases, far more. But normally it doesn't take that much. You'd be surprised how something so terrifying can turn out to be something very simple and easy to fix. We are not just an organization that helps people with spiritual problems. We're an education organization. We educate the public, just as I'm doing here tonight, doing what I can to help dispel fear.
Love it.
Other than that, I consider myself a paranormal social worker. I help the living and the dead equally. I don't any deter. I don't care if you're alive or dead. You're the same to me. You're still a person.
That's a great term.
Yeah.
Well, I hate the term ghost hunter. I don't hunt people, so why would I
Right.
hunt?
I hate that term too, very much so. It makes me think of weekend warriors as opposed to like you're doing it for the fun of it, as opposed to you're not doing it for the science of it. You're not doing it for the helping or the resolution of it. Mm-hmm. So I love that.
Yeah, I love the.
We have a code of ethics, and one of our first rules is if you're not there to help, you shouldn't be there at all.
Right.
Ding, ding, ding. Love it.
So what do you think about some of these shows they have, like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Brothers? I
don't know most of these. I've talked to the Ghost Brothers once. They had some questions for me. I don't even remember what it was about. I think it might have been Annabelle, actually. But they're not. These programs are not real. At least the few I've seen. They gather information from other teams and Ghost Adventures gets information from other teams, takes the rights for themselves, and then acts like this is something they've gotten themselves. Reality programming is not reality. It's still entertainment. It's still there to sell Buicks and soap. That's all. And they can't show you what's true, because the truth is you can sit for days waiting for something to happen.
Yes.
It's not what you see on television. And just because there's a knock, 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 that's not evil. You know, it's like, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. Yeah, who's there? How can I help you? I'm not going to be able to do that kind of a program. I would love to do a program. Don't get me wrong. I would love to do an Anthony Bourdain style travel program where I go around the world and I educate people on how the paranormal manifests, how those cultures deal with it, and come out of it with a better understanding and an empowering message. That's my dream.
You should do that. You should actually do that.
You should push for that.
Yeah.
I would watch it.
Yeah. I think
I don't know where to start. I have no idea where to start.
That would be very intriguing.
Audience, if you know how he can start it, let us know so he can start it.
One of our guests was on a Discovery Channel show, so maybe we can ask her if she can reach out and maybe
that'd be great. I honestly, I don't have any what are they? I don't have any contacts in Hollywood. I'm not that guy. You know, my grandparents got all these movies, but I don't know anybody. It's not my world. I used to be talk show circuit and everything. I hated it.
And speaking of those movies, because I know we talked before about the movies that came out and everything, what would you like the audience to know about those movies? Were they all true, make-believe, or add-on? What was your take on it?
The Conjuring movies are based on actual cases, but they are still just Hollywood fantasies. The most overused marketing tool in Hollywood is inspired by true events. Please, inspired by, based on true events. No. I've seen the 3 Conjuring movies, and the 4th one is based on a case I actually worked on. I don't even exist in the Conjuring universe. My mother is still a teenager. She wasn't a teenager during any of this stuff. And she's certainly not psychic. The Annabelle movies are, or at least the first one was a decent horror film, but none of them are based on any reality whatsoever. None. Not one tiny little bit of the Annabelle movies are real. The Nun does not exist. It is an invention of James Wan.
Yeah.
Yes, my grandparents worked on horrific cases, some of which were actually worse than what is portrayed in the movies. But for instance, Amityville, my grandparents were there for a day. They were sent in by Channel 5 News with a Channel 5 News crew. That was it. Another time, and then when they went to Enfield, England, they were there maybe for a long weekend, maybe a week at the very most. Maurice Grossman was the actual investigator on that case, and he was there for 2 years. He's the man that deserves to be recognized for all of the work he did there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those movies are just fantasies.
Now, I just have, excuse me, I just have one more question for you. Which case really terrified your grandparents?
Like, impact them the most?
Oh, Amityville, without a doubt, that was the one that they both said was the worst thing they ever dealt with. My grandmother, famously said, "It's as close to hell as I ever hoped to get."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were affected by that before and after. The night that they were invited on the case, my grandfather was in his office. It was 3:00 in the morning. My grandmother was up in the bedroom reading a biography on Padre Pio. She had the dogs in bed waiting for my grandfather to come back to bed. And he heard the big dungeon door to the passageway to the museum open, and then 3 footsteps. And he figured it was my grandmother bringing him some coffee. And he said, "I'm down here, Lorraine, come on down." And then he realized he only heard 3 footsteps. And then he heard this whirling, whooshing sound, like a freight train coming down the hallway, a whirlwind coming down the hallway. And he could see his breath. He could, the lamp on the desk started flickering, and he knew something was coming. And he picked up his crucifix and holy water, and he rushed out into the main part of the museum to confront this thing. As it slammed through the entrance, swirled around, and came to rest in front of Annabelle. Nothing to do with Annabelle, just that's where it was. He advanced on it as it was starting to physically manifest, throwing holy water on it and saying, "By the power of Jesus Christ, I command it to be gone." It did nothing. He advanced on it more. And then after he splashed more holy water on it, it swirled around and went back down the hallway. My grandfather knew it was going after my grandmother. And he said, "I couldn't go down that hallway. I couldn't be in that tight enclosure with that energy." So instead, he went out the back door, outside, and he said he could hear what sounded like animals killing one another and fighting with one another. There were no animals doing that, just what it was sounding like. As he was running up the back steps of the porch to get to the kitchen door, my grandmother heard this thing coming up the stairs, smashing through the dining room and the living room. She said it sounded like it was looking for her. I don't believe that. I think it knew exactly where she was, but it was trying to intimidate her.
Yeah.
And she was intimidated. She was terrified. She got up on her knees on the bed. She grabbed a rosary, and she's holding it as this thing comes in and swirls and manifests right in front of her. As my grandfather comes smashing through the back door of the kitchen, as he's running into the house, this thing swirls out of the bedroom again, goes through the living room to just before the kitchen. There is a fireplace, and this black energy went straight up the fireplace as my grandfather came in. And that's when they knew this was going to be probably one of the worst things they ever faced. So yeah, that was the one.
That's terrifying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions before we end the podcast?
Yeah, real quickly, Chris, in regards to the Amityville horror, I don't know much about the case. Being raised Catholic, as we were talking about before, what is with the movie? Obviously, it's all dramatic and there's all these things that are not true about it. But what was the truth of the Amityville Horror House?
Well, in a nutshell, Ron DeFeo Jr., known as Butch, was a heroin addict. He was messed up. His whole family was in conflict, and he was practicing Satanism.
Okay.
It was the early 70s, and his father was feeling it. He was terrified. Went all the way up to Montreal and bought a bunch of religious statues that he placed all around the house and the land. When the neighbors asked him about it, he said, "I have a devil on my back." And they assumed that he was talking about Butch.
Mm-hmm.
And then one night, Butch either came under possession, oppression, something, and moved from room to room and murdered every single person in the house, all of his siblings, 4 siblings, and his parents. Now, the thing that makes me know for certain that this was actually paranormal, every single one of them was found laying face down in their bed. You don't shoot 6 people in a house with a shotgun and they all are laying face down in bed.
Right.
They were held down. They knew what was coming. It just ramped up the terror. When George and Kathy Lutz moved in, George was a former Hell's Angel type of guy, former Special Forces. He was the stepfather of these boys. They didn't get along well. And there was a lot of conflict there again. They had pretty much mortgaged themselves to the hilt to get this cheap house, cheap because so many people have been killed. They didn't care. They didn't believe in the paranormal, but they were unfortunately just the wrong people to move in.
Wow.
It created a perfect storm. People say this was all a fraud, blah, blah, blah. Well, the Lutzes never made a penny on anything, not the book, none of the movies. And one of the Lutz boys, I can't remember which one, I think it was Christopher. I was in the jungle in Colombia using a solar powered router for my internet. And he got a hold of me and threatened my life because he thought I was making Amityville movies and ruining his life.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have anything to do with that.
Right.
You know, but yeah, he was messed up, very messed up individual.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I was wondering because again, I've seen the movie, but it's like, again, Hollywood.
Yeah.
What's truth and what's not truth, you know?
You never know.
Exactly.
Don't treat any movie like a documentary ever.
No, absolutely. I don't.
No, I wasn't saying that to you. I was saying in general.
Yeah, but in general, yeah.
Please, folks, you don't know my grandparents by looking at the Conjuring films. Vera Farmiga is wonderful. She loved my grandmother, but she's not my grandmother when I look at that screen. And
Right.
Patrick never got the chance to meet my grandfather. He's far too charming to be my grandfather.
So
That's great.
well, does anybody else have anything to add or say?
No, thank you very much. This is awesome, Chris. This is so educational, and I wanted to ask you quickly, August. What's the date, August, that you're doing that deep dive?
I haven't said it yet, but it will be on
Okay.
a Sunday afternoon,
Okay.
probably 6 o'clock Eastern time.
Perfect.
And it'll be a 2-hour program, 2.5 at the most. I promise not to keep everyone forever.
Awesome.
Long-winded.
I do too. Well, I know Amy and I are going to be there, and Chrissy.
Yeah, I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
Probably Amy, maybe
We'll be in
Amber,
separate
Nick.
rooms. We'll be in separate rooms.
Well, I'll be there.
Well, you don't have to be in separate rooms. I don't mind. You know.
I want to pay for it, and I want her to pay for it, so I want you to get your money worth, you know?
Well, I just had to have 1, 2, 3 rebuilt and another one on Saturday. I could use the money.
Ow, that hurts. I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is the problem when you get older. You eat a peanut and you break a tooth.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, that happened. I love aging.
Amber,
All right.
Nick,
Well,
anything to say?
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
Yeah.
pleasure.
A pleasure again.
It was my pleasure. Hey, if I could just give one bit of advice to folks, don't let your fear overwhelm you. If you are dealing with something, you can use your free will to call on help, to ask for, and don't do it with fear. Do it with faith
and confidence.
And yes, you don't normally have to worry about whatever you're dealing with there. Don't jump to the conclusion that it's paranormal. And if it is just human, talk to it like a person. Let them know your boundaries. Let them know. Back off. Yes, this is my home. You're scaring my children. You need to stop. And they will listen to you most of the time, just like people on the street will usually listen to you.
Absolutely.
I completely agree with you. I always tell people you are your most powerful tool, and you have to use it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And if not, then that's when you get a hold of me.
Then you just
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to take a moment. Thank you so much for helping us co-host tonight, Colleen.
No, thank you.
You have asked some very intriguing questions, and I almost wish we had more time because I feel like they're just sprouting right now for me. But I mean, we would love to have you back, Chris, at another date. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope our listeners or viewers that they get just as much out of it as that we did, and that they heed your advice.
Well, I appreciate you having me on again. It's
Yes.
been a lot of fun. And it was nice meeting the two of you that I haven't met and seeing the three of you that I did previously.
I always learn more. I feel really lucky because I got to be and interview you twice, and I do.
Poor thing.
I learn more. When you talk to someone else who's in the paranormal, you learn more when you listen to them.
Exactly.
And I'm only in my 30s. I'm probably considered young to a lot of people, but I feel like when you have other people in the field and who's been in the field for a lifetime, you learn, and I'm just soaking it up.
Yeah.
I'm happy to share what I believe I know, but I'm not an expert. There are no experts.
That's very true.
I'm a student. I'm just learning like anybody else. I've gone through so many theories. I've gone through so many theories in my lifetime. Everything you could imagine. Demons are demons. They're aliens. They're other dimensional beings. They're this, they're that, they're the other thing. And where I am today may not be where I am in 5 years. My grandparents were the same way. We adapt with new information. That's what a field of research is supposed to do.
Exactly.
But you have a lot of experience too, so
Yeah, okay.
that's what I personally lean on when I talk to someone. Do they have experience in this area? Have they dealt with something along this line? It's not exactly the same. Like there's no cookie cutter spirit or whatever you're dealing with. It's nice to see someone and trade ideas.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I'm 32.
I'll see you again soon.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Like Amber said, we'd love to have you on again.
Yeah.
It would be a pleasure. It would be an honor.
Well, Amber, I guess you can take us out of here.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everyone who watched this episode. And thank you again, Chris, for joining us. And I hope that you all learned something awesome. Feel free to check out Chris's different links from his Instagram to the Warren Legacy Foundation website. Stay tuned for updates about your upcoming Zoom, what do we call it? Presentation. And we'll go from there. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks again, Chris.
Bye.